All right, so welcome. I am going to record this, so if you missed something, you may be able to reach out to the person who invited you because that might not have been me, and they may have access to the recording or a link later, so I can tell you how to do that. I am Mary Green. I do live in the La Crosse, Wisconsin area as well, and I just first going to do a little bit introduction and housekeeping. Here, I think most everybody is getting really familiar with Zoom, so, but we might still have a few new people on there. Really tonight, I just want to welcome, there are people on from all over the country. So we're going to speak fairly generally as we're talking. We're not going to talk area specific or state specific too much, although there might be some examples used. Tonight's call is really not about whether or not your kid should go to school or whether your kid should be home or virtual. It's not really about whether you feel like it's too unsafe for the kid to go to public school right now, or if kids should or shouldn't be wearing a mask. Really, tonight's call is about making the right decision for your family. And I think that there are so many people right now not sure what the right decision is. And that's really what has driven me to put together this group of friends who have some experience homeschooling of a variety of type. And there was a lot of interest in my area. So you've gotten invited, you've jumped on for a reason. And my goal really is that you walk away tonight um, inspired. And for no matter what your decision is or was, or if you're still on the fence about anything, is that you still walk away with inspired with some really good takeaways and some really good tips. And there may be some people on tonight too that are here planning to do virtual or distance learning of some capacity, not planning to homeschool or not sure if they think they could do it. And that's okay, because I think a lot of what we may talk about very well may apply for those families as well. So there are a few housekeeping things. There are quite a few speakers, so I have not muted the whole group where no one can unmute, because there's a variety. And at the very end, I'm going to ask everybody to stay muted up through the end of the speakers' presentations. And when the speakers are done, we're going to have a time for question and answer. And so you may have the ability to unmute at that point, but I would ask that you please stay muted while while we're all presenting and talking. Make sure I didn't miss anything there. As you listen, feel free to also use the chat and post questions. Some of those might get answered during the presentation, so they may not get answered as we're talking. I'm planning to try to leave the call open for about 30 minutes or maybe a little longer, depending on how much is going on in the chat when we're all finished, so that if there's resources or there's a question or there's something in the chat that you wanted to get, I'll just leave it open and just close and turn the screen to the wall or something, turn it off, so that you can copy anything that might be in there. And then, so the first thing I want to do, and we've got about 25 people, so this might be challenging. You can change up at the top, just one more housekeeping thing, speaker view or gallery view if you're new. If you want to see only the person who's speaking, change it in the top right corner or hover, change it to speaker view, and then it will automatically switch to who is talking. But right now I want to do gallery view, and you guys may want to too. And you may, if you're able to turn your video on just for a second, turn it on. I want to just see kind of how many people are somewhat undecided right now what your kids are doing in the fall. Like where they're, because I know a lot of school systems keep changing their plans. So is there anybody who's just still totally on the fence and undecided that's able to raise your hand? I'm trying to watch and see. Okay, I see you. Or maybe I see you, Alana, and I can't see your name on somebody. So yeah, we got several of you. What about, is there anybody on who knows that their kids are going to do virtual or distance learning this year through maybe through the school system or through private or online program? Anybody doing that? Okay, I see you, Tyra. Okay, and raise your hand if you might be going to do homeschool or are going to do homeschool and you've never done it before and you're brand new. So we've got a variety of those. Okay, I just kind of want our speakers to have an idea where we're at. So that's enough for me. I want to introduce Tara Oldham. Tara's a friend, cousin, lots of things. Known Tara for a very long time, and she's our first speaker. So I'm going to let her take it away, and then I'll try to make sure I keep us on track with who's next. Okay.
Sounds good. And Mary, are you ready to share screen some of mine when I tell you?
I will. It might take me a
Okay.
moment. So yeah.
Okay, that's totally okay. Okay, so hi guys, I'm Tara Oldham and I'm from Harrisburg, Illinois, and I'm a mom of three. I have a 9-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 1-year-old. My daughter originally started off at a private school and she went there from pre-K 4 through first grade. So I started homeschooling her at second grade, and this will be our 3rd year of homeschooling. And this will actually be my first full year. I know I did a little bit in the spring with 2 kids, but my first full year of teaching 2 at home. So I'm really excited about and nervous about adding the second child. So I'll just share a little bit why we homeschool. She is a very happy, bubbly, very energetic kid, and she was coming home with migraines daily, and nobody could figure out what was wrong with her, the doctors, and they felt like she was overstressed. So I felt like this tug from the Lord. It had to have been from the Lord because I said I would never homeschool, one of those. And it just kept coming up in my head and coming up in my head. And after praying about it, we decided like, hey, maybe we should totally give homeschooling a shot. And it worked really well for our family. So on another thing, a quick tip to get started. Say you are thinking about homeschooling and you're like, I have no clue where to start with curriculum. I have no clue how I would do it at home. Like if I don't do e-learning at school and I just kind of want to get my own curriculum and I have no idea where to go. I am going to post a link in the comments after I get done talking. And it is a homeschooling quiz. You can get on there and click and see what type of homeschooling mom that you would be, or what type of homeschooling fits your family. And this is really cool because this kind of gave me a start when I first started, like, do I want to do more traditional schooling, just like the school? Do I want to keep that schedule, or do I want to be more flexible? And that will give you an idea kind of where you are and where your personality fits in. And then, Mary, if you can share screen that picture, but this is a really cool photo that you can look at and see what type of curriculum fits that type of mom. So you have your traditional, and it has a bunch of curriculum listed below or to the side. It has classical mom, distance learning. So there's all sorts of curriculum that can at least give you a direction on where to start looking. Okay, we can probably put that in the comments, or if you need that graphic, just reach out to whoever invited you and they will help you get a hold of that graphic. Okay, so I was just going to give a few tips on schedule. I won't keep us much longer on my half, but basically, the great news is about your schedule is you don't have a full classroom. So I think people think like, what am I going to do with my kids for 6 to 8 hours? Like, how am I going to school them and keep them busy that long? Well, you're not going to have to do that is the best news because you don't have 20 plus kids or however many kids are in a typical classroom. So your time frame to school might not be 6 to 8 hours. So Mary, do you care to share screen that other chart that I sent you? There is a chart that gives approximate time frames of how long you should be teaching your kids, and it gives it by grade level. So like kindergarten, I think is an hour and a half at the most. So like kindergarten, you would do an hour and a half with your child per day. 3rd and 4th grade might be around 3 hours, and those are the age groups of my kids. So that's what I'm mentioning. Now I will admit I did homeschool my 3rd grader a little bit longer last year, but it just depends on how much curriculum you have and what schedules you have to how long you're going to homeschool them per day. So with that in mind, just looking over that chart, you're going to want a goal per day. So my kids, and I'll talk more about this in a minute, but they work best in the very early mornings. That's not true for all kids, but you get to pick that time when you think that they would work best. So my kids get up really early. So the goal would be to homeschool them from 7:30 to 11:30 and have it done by 11:30 each day. So then I'm able to prepare lunch from 11:30 to 12. And while I'm doing that, because I have little kids, and I know some of you have older, but this pertains probably more to little ones, I let them listen to an audiobook from the library, or if we have any on hand, you can listen to an audiobook, and you can give them kinetic sand while they're listening, coloring books, whatever that is to keep them busy. So I still kind of keep them on schedule, even when we're done with homeschooling, to give them something extra to do. In those 4 hours that I homeschool, I like to break it down. This is really important for little. So I don't know if you can see me. Mary, do you care to stop share screening real quick? Can you see me? I like to break it down and show kids visually. So this is Elle's schedule, and you can't really see it up close. I'm just giving you a visual. And she can actually check mark each of her things that she's supposed to do. So say it's writing, you write their schedule out, and they can go up and check mark. And even for older kids in high school, you can give them like, their schedule to put in their binder or whatever, but just give them something visually to look at. That way they know what's expected of them. We had a hard time with that the first year, where my kids like, are we done yet? Are we done? Okay, we just did that. Are we done? And it's like, no, we're not done. So we gave them a schedule to look at so they can visually see how much left they have to do before they get done with their day. So that just saves a lot of fighting. In the home in general, for homeschooling, and no negotiating kind of thing. And then another thing was that I mentioned earlier, that we school from 7:30 to 11:30. What I encourage you to do is pick a time that works best for your kids. So Ella's up at 5:30 every day. She has always done that since she was a baby. So she homeschools best in the morning. Past 10:30, she's just poof, done. Now Grayson needs a little bit longer to wake up to be able to get started and want to get started. So I give Elle, I know she's an early riser. I know she's going to want to start at 7:30. Mom's not ready at 7:30. So I give her that list, and she can start doing the stuff that she knows how to do on her own by herself. So like her handwriting or her math programs online this year. So she'll be able to get on and get that done by herself. So, you can kind of create what works best, an environment that works best for your kids. And that is like one of my absolute favorite things about homeschooling, is being able to pick that time and then be flexible the rest of the day. Like we like to go and play the rest of the day, especially on nice days. So, whatever time that looks like for your kids, those are just some things to think about. Mary, I have more to say, but I know I'm out of time, but we can save that for question and answer.
Yeah, I might come back at question and answers, so that's okay. Brooke, are you ready?
Yes, I am. All right, so that was awesome, Tara. I was taking notes. Thank you. So I'm Brooke, and I live in the St. Louis area. I was actually raised in El Dorado, which is pretty close to where Tara lives. So I'm a mom of two little girls, and I come from a background of homeschool family. I was homeschooled a year in middle school and then most of high school, and my husband was also homeschooled, and I had cousins who were homeschooled from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. So I've come from quite a bit of homeschoolers in my family. See, I'm looking at my notes here. So I just kind of gathered some pros just from being homeschooled. One of the biggest things is socialization, and it seems like that's always the first question, is like, if your child's homeschooled, how are they going to get that socialization piece? And so, when I look back at my experience, I feel like I had a really awesome, rich socialization experience. I got to interact with a variety of different ages at co-ops and libraries. And you're not just stuck in a classroom with the same like age group. So you're not with all, first graders or second graders. You get to interact with different grades and work together. So that was really cool. And then let's see. I also feel like it prepared me really well for college. I did the ABECA program through high school, and just the style of that curriculum is really similar to how college is. So I think that really helped prepare me for testing and textbooks and things like that. So that was cool too. So I'm a college graduate after being homeschooled. And then you get to work at your own pace too, which I loved. And then learning can also happen just beyond the classroom. So we did lots of field trips. Even if it was like last minute, we would just go up to Springfield and go to the Lincoln Memorial or Museum. So it was just awesome to have that kind of freedom and schedule. The only con that I really felt was just, it's really silly, but I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to miss out on hearing a bell ring or having a locker. And like those types of things were that was like the only con I can really think of with middle school and high school. So now I have a four-year-old, almost 5-year-old that I'm doing kindergarten prime with, homeschool, and we do handwriting without tears. I'm also a pediatric OT, so I really like the handwriting without tears for just handwriting in general. And I'm using the good and the beautiful as well with her, and she's loving it so far. But really at that age, and just to get started with young ones, a play-based and sensory kind of learning is what's worked best for us. And then just reading lots of books and talking about, what's in the books and predicting and just keeping it really fun is the best part of grade school kids. So, but that was my experience. I loved being homeschool, and yeah, awesome. That's what I got, Mary.
All right. Thanks, Brock.
Yeah.
Going to move on to Becky. If Becky's ready.
Yes, I am. Hey, well, welcome everybody. And I'm here as a homeschool mom of 13 years to tell you that if I can do it, anybody can do it. It's been an interesting learning process for all of us. And I'm actually taking notes right now because I totally believe that we get to demonstrate to our kids that we all want to learn, and we demonstrate our desire to keep learning, and they follow that. So I have 3 children. My oldest is a senior in high school this year, so he is going to be 17. And then I have a 13-year-old boy also, so you can pray for me. I have 2 teenage boys. And then an almost 11-year-old girl. So we're going into 6th grade, 8th grade, and 12th grade this year. So my oldest, I started looking into homeschooling when he was about 3. He had a really serious nut allergy. And it was to the point that I started thinking about his safety and how it would be for his safety. So some really kind people, generous people sent us to a homeschool convention, which exists. It's kind of amazing. I had no idea. And we learned and we heard from homeschool families, and we got to meet the kids, and I fell in love with the fact that the family got to live their lives this way, and how much richer the whole experience of growing up was for these kids. And it was different, and I like different. So we decided to start. Preschool was real easy. All I did was got a preschool workbook from Walmart, and it's got all the basics in it. And so we just worked through that. We did like a page a day, kept it really simple. The best advice that these other experienced moms and dads said is the early years of learning, our job is to get them excited and hooked on learning. That's it. Kindergarten, hopefully, they'll have all those basics down and 1st grade. But if you are successful at getting your kid excited about learning, your child excited about learning, then you are doing a great job. All right. So keep that in mind when you're starting. Let's see what else. I have homeschooled through all the different stages, having the crazy toddler running around. Our first one was obviously the easiest because we had 2 years of pretty peaceful education in the morning. And then my toddler, we had to work around nap time. So homeschool became in the afternoon during nap time. And then when my 3rd came along, we had to just work around that. So each of our different years, we have really been able to adapt around our lives. And I can tell you the first one, somebody mentioned the other day, they said, what do you do with someone who's a struggling reader? So this first child, he has a really high IQ, but he was struggling with learning how to read. And he was probably about 7 years old. I always read aloud to him. So I knew he was getting information, but about 7 years old, 7, 8, I realized he was into like guns and knives. How terrible is that, right? He was a little boy. That's what little boys are into. Cabela's catalog. The kid loved reading the Cabela's catalog. And not only did he learn how to read using the Cabela's catalog, see, anyone could do this. He not only learned how to read using the Cabela's catalog, he also learned economics and comparative analysis and all of these. Like, he is my best shopper. If I need to get a birthday present for anyone, he can tell me where to find it and where the best deal is and if there's a coupon available. So there's all sorts of great things that came from that. But yes, so find what is fascinating to them and they are going to start reading it. And it might just be a catalog. Hopefully those are still coming out. I know we're getting fewer catalogs nowadays. Could be comics, it could be whatever. But there's a little tip for you. My second one, my second son, he has dyslexia. And you know what? He didn't start reading chapter books till he was 6th or 7th grade. And you could be concerned about that, but I knew it was coming. We were working with him and it took till then. So just know that your kids, they're gonna work it out in their time frame. Keep reading aloud to them because all this time he still had a high school vocabulary because we read aloud to him and we still fed him the information for his grade level. And eventually he caught on. So anyways, those little tips for reading. One website I want to share with you is hslda.org. And I'll put that in the chat. It's called homeschoollegaldefense.org. And if you go on there, there's getting started tips. There's all sorts of, all the rules and guidelines for your state because they're all different. Connecticut here, we actually don't have any laws about homeschooling. So that's one thing that keeps me here is that we have a lot of freedoms when it comes to homeschooling. But look on that, you can see what the rules and regulations and guidelines are for your state. And I'll put that in the chat. So I think that was it. I'm happy to touch on any of those. By the time I got to my third child, she'd heard all the teaching and she actually taught herself to read by the time she was 4 because she had to hear passively. She passively learned. So I think that's it, guys. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer, but you can do it. Just trust me.
Thanks, Becky. You did awesome. That's really good. Caitlin.
All right. And I live out in Hawaii. I have 4 children. I have a 10-year-old boy, 8-year-old girl, almost 6-year-old boy, and an almost 4-year-old girl. I have been homeschooling my kids officially since my oldest was 4, so about 6 going on 7 years now. And before I actually got into a homeschool curriculum, I just did a co-op when my son was 3 years old, and I hosted that at my house 1 day a week where we just did lots of manipulatives and learning through fun and learning how to sit and be still for a certain period of time. So that was kind of where we started. I've always been very involved in my community as a stay-at-home mom, so it's just important for me to continue being involved so that they got a sense of what it means to be part of the community. I can say that Christ is a very big part of our curriculum, and so we just prayed about what curriculum we wanted to use, and that's what led us to Classical Conversations. So we've utilized the Classical Conversations curriculum ever since my oldest was 4 years old. And the reason why I fell in love with it was because it taught the different stages of learning. And that's what I wanted to touch on here tonight was just kind of those 3 different levels that we focus on inside of that curriculum, which is the grammar stage, the dialectic stage, and the rhetoric stage. And so anytime that you enter in anything that you're going to learn, you go through these 3 different stages of learning. Even as an adult, you know, you could take something that you don't know at all, like sewing and the things that you need to learn at the very beginning of sewing, that you need to learn what a needle is, what the thread is, you know, different sewing terms. And that's the grammar stage of the subject. And then as you continue to learn that subject, you go into this dialectic stage where you start connecting different dots. Why do I need to learn how to sew? How can sewing, you know, solve problems inside of this world? And you're kind of starting to understand the different connections that this subject can have inside of the world. And then in the rhetoric phase of learning, you go into synthesizing and being able to regurgitate everything that you've just learned into a teaching mode. So you're drawing your own conclusions, you're forming your own opinions, and you're able to debate and provide that information back in a logical and well-formatted way. So inside of a subject, that's just kind of the routine that you go through in learning. And I found that was really helpful, whether you're in homeschooling or not, just kind of understanding how to learn. I felt like that was the most important part of education in general. So teaching the kids how they learn best, whether that's auditorily, kinesthetically, visually, I think those are the main three. Auditory, yeah, I got those. Okay, so you know, just kind of figuring out the best way and the way that learning sticks with that kid. So you know, with 4 kids, we have this one curriculum that kind of gives us the core of what we want to learn, and then I can take the different things inside of that curriculum, you know, that science section, and make it more hands-on and be able to educate through the different ways of learning as well as the different levels. So I can pare things down to my 5-year-old's level. And I have always believed in a one classroom kind of method where the older kids help to teach the younger kids. And so I've always wanted to make sure that I encourage those with large families that think, I have too many kids, I would never be able to do this. Yes, you can. You can. You don't need to teach them all different things. You can teach them all the same exact thing, just at different levels. I think that's kind of the core of what I really feel like is helpful and knowledgeable when it comes to just educating your kids, is that we all have to learn. And so the faster you learn how to learn, the faster you learn. So yeah.
Thank you, Caitlin. Those are really good tips, and a little bit of a different approach than I think, like you said, I think a lot of us think about. So, Kara.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kara, and I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and we have 4 children, 16 and 14-year-old boys, an almost 12-year-old girl, and a 4-year-old boy. So I was actually homeschooled as well from 6th grade through high school. So I've got a little bit of that perspective, like Brooke was talking about. And it's a lot different being the parent than the homeschool student, I will say. The responsibility is a little heavier, but it's great to be able to have that, those memories and things that I experienced as a child to be able to help encourage me even in this process. But it is helping me realize a lot of things that the others have shared, that the great thing about homeschooling is just how adjustable it is, and being able to fine tune it for your child. We started homeschooling from the beginning, felt like it was important for our family, felt like we were called and supposed to do that. I do tell people to, if you pray, make sure it's what you're supposed to do, because it's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding. Seeing my 16-year-old boy playing with my 4-year-old boy and not kicking him out of his room all the time. Like, all of those things are so powerful as a family, knowing that those relationships are there. So I was going to talk a little bit about the upper grades. We actually have a tutorial in our city that we started with for middle school and high school. So I've got the 3 olders are going into 7th, 9th, and 11th this year, doing a 2-day-a-week tutorial. which has been good to have some extra structure, especially since we added our little bonus to our family. He threw all kinds of curveballs into our world, but that's been great. I know there are lots of those options around the country that were not there when I was homeschooled. I did Bob Jones textbooks when I was in high school and was able to get scholarships to college. And as Brooke mentioned, like I felt very prepared for college because of the independent learning that I had done as a homeschool student. So I look forward, and I've been seeing that in my older children, having them develop their self-motivation, their realization of time management, helping them learn that, their awareness of time in general compared to younger ages, where they're like, oh, if I get my work done in the morning, then I'm done the rest of the day. Or some of my kids work better in the afternoon. It's like, all right, so then let's not, helping them guide them through that and knowing when their best times are and helping them to work through, and they come to my husband and I for, input, counsel. Like that's one of the most wonderful things that having the older children and homeschooling them is just feeling like we have a heart connection with them. So 3 children going through puberty, and we have our moments, but overall it's very peaceful and we're able to talk through things and, work things out because we're around each other and we have a relationship, which is such a huge gift and definitely one of the top reasons that I feel homeschooling is great. Another thing, I know a lot of you have younger students, and I honestly, there's times where I really, really miss this, but I think Caitlin mentioned it, but doing multi-level learning, and I see in the chats, Becky talked about My Father's World. We use that in elementary, being able to use one history book or going to the library and finding biographies on people or whatever, doing that all together with the children that are so close in age, and then having different levels of work for them to do. So like the older child might write an essay or book report on what we read, but the younger child does copy work out of the book, things like that. And so you're able to all be together. It simplifies your schedule. It connects you all because you're all learning the same thing. So there's conversations that happen throughout the day that all revolve around what you've been talking about together. I am a firm believer in hands-on learning as far as I love traveling. And so doing field trips and being able to help them experience those things really makes a huge impact on our children. And having a smaller, doing it as a family is a much different experience than in large school groups. So anyway, I think that's about covers what were my topics. So anyway, it's not easy all the time, but I was just talking to my husband before this tonight, and like there's things I have expectations, all of us have expectations, but being able to realize the benefits aren't necessarily just academic. There are a lot more benefits to it. So don't be discouraged. I hope that you are encouraged through this. So
thanks, Kara. I hope you guys are all hanging with us. I gave these ladies really like 3 to 5 minutes apiece to cover a topic. So if they're talking fast, that's part of the reason, because they're all very passionate about it. That's why they're talking to you. And so I appreciate all of them, and I appreciate all of you sticking with us. Hopefully you're doing okay. I see some people looking tired. So stay with us. I've got 3 more people to talk, and then we'll get to question and answer. So Wendy.
Hey, I'm Wendy Lawson. I'm a homeschooling mom of 6. Okay, well, only 5 are actually in school. But you might as well just say you school all of them when you have a toddler in the house, because they're still learning. It's one thing I've learned is you're not just like sitting in a classroom, with trying to get those hours in just like they do in public school. You're living life. So keep that in mind. Like you are living your life while you school. So you do have to have some sort of routine or schedule, whatever. Like if you work really well with a schedule, great, have a schedule. If you work better with just a routine, just have a routine, but just know that you're going to be living life while you do it, you know? So you're going to be teaching a kid how to read and getting up to potty train one because they say, I got to go to the bathroom right now. You know how potty training is. So like, just remember you're living life while you do it. But, so I have 6 kids. I have a 14-year-old who is starting 9th grade this year, 12-year-old starting 7th, I think 10-year-old starting 5th, 9-year-old 3rd, 4th. I say that because he's like 4th grade level math, 3rd grade level reading, and then the 1st grader, Verity right here, and then a 4-year-old. So I actually had told Mary in the beginning, I was like, I really don't know if you want me to speak because I'm actually coming out of a really long season of burnout. Just real and true, honest burnout. So I've been homeschooling out from the beginning. So I think this is my 10th year. I started with my youngest at 4, only because he was showing signs of wanting to read. And looking back on it, I probably wouldn't have even done that. I would have had fun with symphonics and then just read to him, because that's truly from the beginning what we have enjoyed. And so even when people had to pull out of school in quarantine, I just kept wanting to tell moms, just read to your kids, just read to them, do some math and read really good literature. And so that's what we've done from the beginning. And then I've gone along a lot of different rabbit trail, or just not rabbit trails, but just tried different things. I started with a box curriculum where everything comes basically in a box, in a set. And then I moved to classical conversations. And then when I hit the stage of burnout almost 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, or what, I guess, it was just as my oldest, I added my 5th child. My oldest was in middle school. I guess the whole puberty thing, was hitting. And I had to really evaluate, like, why am I doing this? Do I want to keep doing this? Why did I teach them to begin with? So in the beginning, it was because I just felt like they could learn something that they wouldn't get in public school, that I wanted them to learn. I went to public school and I'm fine. I mean, I was a good student. I graduated top of my class. I mean, public school was great for me, but there were just things I wanted them to learn. I wanted them to get Bible. I wanted them to have science from a more creation standpoint. I wanted them to have history. I wanted history to be woven in with the Old Testament and the New Testament, rather than just having, okay, well, here's secular history, here's sacred. So there were just things that I wanted my kids to get. And I could have taught them after, I could have gone to school and I could have taught them afterwards, but I wanted to be with my kids and I wanted to teach them. And it has been a really, it's been so encouraging. Like when you see that child, that I'll be honest with you, if you're teaching a child how to read, there's days when you're falling asleep on the couch listening to them sound out that word for the 5th time, and you're just dozing off. But when they pick up that chapter book or that magazine, and they start reading it on their own, it's just so rewarding to know, I helped them do that. I helped them sound out the letters, although I did have one who pretty much taught herself how to read too. But it's just so rewarding to watch them. And what's really awesome is to learn with them. So if you're reading them good literature and you're picking subjects too, or curriculum that excites you as well as them, then it's fun. It's fun because you feel like you're getting a whole nother education yourself. And so that's been the rewarding part. But as I hit this homeschool burnout, I had to figure that out again. Like I had to think, why am I doing this? And that's pretty much what I came up with. And I will say, I took a little break in the spring when everybody else was quarantining. I had my kids keep doing math and reading, and there are things where we can continue our learning. So I did a boot camp. I did an online Charlotte Mason boot camp, because from the very beginning, like I said, I had kind of done pieces of different kinds of curriculum, more of a classical style, workbooks, just different things that I pulled together. And But I realized from the beginning what we've truly loved is reading. And so I did this boot camp. So just know that there's ways that if you want to continue your own learning, you can do that. And it's really, it was just rewarding for me to be able to stretch myself and for my kids to see me continue to learn and for me to do homework, for me to take classes online. You need to leave. I said, if you're going to sit here, you can't be a distraction. So I'm actually completely revamping everything this year, and we're switching to a website called Ambleside Online. So it doesn't have, I mean, yes, you can order the box curriculums. They're a little more pricey, and those are awesome too, like My Father's World, those things. I started with Sunlight, but there's also something like Ambleside Online where the whole curriculum's laid out for you, everything you need to do. You just have to buy or borrow the books from the library, or you can find them used, on eBay and different places. So you can make it affordable, even with 6 kids. And I'm trying to think what else I was supposed to talk about. Oh, and I wanted to say with Ambleside Online, if literature and reading is and you like that direction, if you think you and your kids would go that direction or like that direction, they have an emergency plan that I think was put in place actually because of Hurricane Katrina years ago, but they pointed that out when everyone had to quarantine and start virtual learning. So there are a lot of those websites have help for you. So just look for those kinds of things. And then, I was going to tell you 2 books that I read recently during my burnout that were probably most encouraging. One of books one I'm actually still reading, and one I read really quickly. So all of you could pick it up and probably read it this weekend. But it's called Mere Motherhood by Cindy Rollins. And she is a mom of 9. 8 of them were boys. And she is just so real and just talks about how basically she did school living life. And another thing I wanted to say was, one thing that has saved me with so many kids is what some others have mentioned. I have done subjects together. So like they each have their own math level, they each have their own phonics or reading level. But I love having a morning time where we can do Bible together. And then we can, a lot of time in the beginning, now my older ones are having to do some of their own thing, but we would do history together. So we'd all do the same history. And like someone else said, just the older ones might write about it, the younger ones might draw a picture. We would all do science together, and the older ones might participate more in the experiment while the younger ones just watched or whatever. So there's so many ways to combine subjects, so it's not so overwhelming with multiple children. But anyway, that's one thing that Cindy Rollins talks about in her book, Mere Motherhood, is how important morning time was. Like even when life hit hard, new babies, sickness, they kept their morning time, even if it just meant snuggling on the couch and reading the Bible and reading good books. They kept that, and that, I mean, she has like I want to think she's got like a rocket scientist for a kid. Like, I don't know, one's in the military and I don't know what else, but they managed to make it through life. So, and then the other book is it's a newer book, but it's called Call of the Wild and Free by Ainsley Arment. And if you even look up that website, wildandfree.com, it is super encouraging. And that's just something I have just found because, like I said, I had hit this burnout. I had all these kids. I was trying to figure out what direction I wanted to go. And I just realized I wanted to go back to the basics. I wanted to go back to experience learning, interest-led learning, and then and reading and lots of literature. So those are 2 great books. And I think that's all you wanted me to say, Mary. I can't remember. I wrote it down, but hopefully I covered it.
I think you covered it. Jen, I'll let you go, and then Sarah, just jump on when Jen is done. You're muted, Jen.
There we go. I'm Jennifer Carr, and I'm coming from the perspective of having homeschooled my kids for just 2 years. My goal was to homeschool them through middle school and then reassess and continue on or not. But life changed, and it was only for 2 years. So I'm going to come from a perspective of those of you who are thinking about doing this maybe just for COVID time and seeing how this might affect you and your family. And there have been so many great things everyone has said, so I'm going to try to come up with some new things that we haven't really talked about. One, the fact that you're doing homeschooling now and deciding it now means that you're not a weirdo. Like, I was considered like some anti-establishment kind of person because we chose to homeschool, and that was different from everyone else. So right now, so many people are homeschooling, so that's not sort of an issue for you. It's kind of like, oh wow, you're a hero, you're amazing, you're going to do this, you know, pick up things and just take off with it, and you're going to get to educate your children. Another thing, and my children are young, kindergarten, second, third grade when we homeschooled. So we found that it really did only take 1, 2, 3 hours to do our curriculum and our plan for the day. There's so much time in the day for them to do so many other things with you. You know, they get to learn to cook. They get to learn to do things around the house. They get to learn to invent things and spend a lot more time on things that they wouldn't get to do. When they're in a traditional school setting, they might be gone for 8 hours of the day. They are spent when they come home from school. They're exhausted, and you actually kind of get to see the worst of their behavior because they've done everything that they can do to behave in school and stay out of trouble and make friends and do all the things that they're supposed to do. And then they come home and they're just a puddle of mess. And so it's just kind of nice to know that you're getting them. You know, you get to see them at both the best and the worst of times. But you also get the best of them, you know, and they're not exhausted and spent. So that's a wonderful treat. As a homeschool parent, you get to learn your kids' learning habits. You get to learn what excites them, what motivates them, how to teach them, how to, you know, how to help them over the hurdles, how to see how they become independent learners. And those are really important skills for life. You get to, you know, create a network of other families who are doing this as well. So they get to see you be creative and you kind of rely on other people and have a network of people that you're learning from. Let's see, my children are now 18, 20, and 21. So 2 in college and 1 going next year. And when they talk about, even if it was just 2 years, you know, when they talk about those homeschool times, they look on it fondly. Like they were glad for that time together. They were glad for that investment. They get so much of their time to do things in the community. You know, maybe, and obviously in COVID times, this is different, but maybe when this is all lifted, you get to go to nursing homes again, or you get to, you know, do other activities that you wouldn't get to do. Oh goodness. I wrote down all these things to kind of say, well, this hasn't been talked about yet. Maybe I can add this. But anyway, the time that you invest in your children, their learning and their growing, is really important for their future as well. Oh, one other thing, I know that like when our kids were in school, we didn't have time to resolve a lot of problems. It would be like they were fighting, and then it was like, okay, sorry, we got to get out the door. We got to go to school. We got to go to the next thing. And we never worked through the issues. But when we were all home together, we would have to spend time to solve those problems and to work through it and to kind of, you know, like, how are we going to resolve this? How are we going to come back to, you know, saying I'm sorry, you know, when we're not rushed out the door and off to the next thing. So those are just the little pieces that I had.
Great. That's really good value. And you came together and pulled some stuff that I hadn't even thought about. So it's great. Sarah Spatz.
Hey, so I'm Sarah, and I actually live in Pennsylvania. My kids are 4, 6, 8, and 10. And I think it's neat because we all have different kind of backgrounds with different things. As far as homeschooling goes, my 10-year-old, when she was first starting out, I homeschooled her for kindergarten and first grade. And then I struggled with her. She just, we were butting heads a lot. And I said, okay, you're going to public school. And her sister next in line, who I was kind of homeschooling a little bit, like pre-K kind of stuff, kindergarten stuff. She then also went into kindergarten when her sister went into second grade at the public school. And this year we are pulling them back home with us. And everybody has different reasons as to why they're thinking about homeschooling and with everything going on. So we just decided that's what we feel is best for our family right now. And I think one of the biggest things we can teach our kids right now is not so much academic stuff, but just respect for each other. I think there's a lot of different things going on right now where people are just being rude to each other. And it's like, well, let's just respect each other's, like where we all are as far as our decision making. Some people are going to send them to public schools, some are private schools, some are homeschool. Wherever you are, just know that you're choosing what's best for your family, and that's what other people are trying to do too. So I just love that we can have different opinions about different things and still teach that to our kids, that we can respect people regardless of our differences. Just some things that I wanted to talk on real quick. I want to repeat what Becky mentioned, hslda.org. Homeschool Legal Defense Association. I love that she mentioned that. I was going to mention it too. So there it is. If you live in a high regulation state, Pennsylvania, New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Vermont are the highest ones. We have more regulations than the other states. There are some states that have no regulations at all. You don't even have to let the school, I guess, know. You don't have to write a letter of intent or anything, which surprised me because I live in one of the high regulated states. Just looking through the law though, for whatever your state is, know what's required and what's not. Even though in Pennsylvania they have a lot of regulations, here there are still a lot of overreach that the school district will try to do. So it's important to know what is it that you have to hand in and what do you not have to respond to. So I recommend Facebook groups, support groups for your state, just to touch base with people and find out some things like, hey, the school district is saying this. Do I actually have to hand this in or not? And if you live in one of those no regulation states, hopefully things will go a whole lot more smoothly. But just keep that in mind. That website's great too. They have memberships, and they will actually defend you if something goes on between you and the school. They will defend the law as it is. And so that's something to look into, especially in a high regulation state. Another thing is activities. Some schools or some states will have it in the law to where the schools have to allow students the right to do certain activities after school. Some are during the school day. So maybe your children might be allowed to have classes, certain classes, or band or football after school, and maybe after school, maybe during the day. So that's something to look into if you have kids that are looking for a social aspect with peers that are public school students, then you can look into that. That's something to consider. Like I said, it's different from one state to another, so definitely check on your state. Another thing is getting resources from the school in our state and maybe in your state as well. Depending on the homeschooling law, the school may be required to at least offer you resources like school books. So if you're like, oh my goodness, I want my kid to be able to, in 2 or 3 years or 1 year or whatever, after all this craziness settles down, I'd like to be able to put them back into public school and be at a similar spot to their peers as far as what they're learning, then that may be an option for you, is to check with your school and see, or check with your law in your state and see if the school needs to supply, or at least offer to supply textbooks and resources like that. So that's something to look into as well. I didn't realize really how that worked, but I had heard about that from one of the secretaries at the school once. So I thought that was kind of neat to know. It doesn't apply to every type of homeschooling necessarily, like private tutoring. It's not required in my state, but for homeschooling it is. So you might want to look into that as well. My background is I have a teaching degree. I'm not currently teaching. I was laid off when I had my third child. Now we have 4. So I'm going to speak just a little bit as far as academic standards. If you're the type of parent and teacher for your children that you would like to keep them to go along with the state standards, you certainly may do that. Look online, just do a search for your state and academic standards, and it should be able to pull up for you any standards that the teachers are going by and putting into their lesson plans. As teachers, we learn how to put all the nitty-gritty into our lesson plans, and we have to state our standards and things like that. So there are lists of those. I've printed, I print them out, and I have it so I can look at it, even though that's not necessarily the type of teacher parent that I'm going to be as homeschooling with my kids. There's one type of schooling that I've been kind of looking into that hasn't been mentioned yet, so I'll just mention it. It's called unschooling. It's kind of at one of the extremes. There's more of the traditional, single type of curriculum, homeschooling, and then at the other end there is we're going to learn whatever we're going to find out what the child wants to learn about and focus on that and do that. And then there's everything else in between. So there's lots of options, but I wanted to put that out there because oftentimes it's not tracks, and it's part of the style that I'm looking to use with my children this year. We do also do like Math UC is our math curriculum that I kind of play off of a little bit. I use Bob books with my kids. Those are just like early readers with, short words like mat that you can sound out letter by letter and sound by sound. So those were really good if you're just looking for some nice readers to have. And we've also done Sing, Spell, Read, Write as an option for us as well that we'll be using. But as far as the other stuff, I'm kind of going to gear it off the kids. We learned about lace wings recently because we had lace wing eggs on our onions. So just taking like the experiences that they have in life, because life really is learning, and just taking that and saying, okay, let's learn a little bit more about that, or what fascinates you about that. And then as far as some of the things I bring from the teaching aspect of it is sometimes we get so much into test taking and resources like, show me your math, your multiplication tables or your addition equations. Sometimes we get so much on this written stuff and we forget that not everybody expresses their learning in the same way. So I just wanted to encourage you to keep an open mind. Some thoughts are, you can look online for different types of learning. I can't think off the top of my head right now. It's been a few years since I was in the classroom. But you could do things like, if it's multiplication tables, maybe your student would like to rap them out to you, or, create a new way to express them. Or if they're learning about a book, maybe they don't want to write about it. Maybe they want to act it out for you. So just thinking of different ways that they can show you that they've learned the material that you're looking for them to learn, or that they were looking to learn, a different way for you to be able to assess that, and not necessarily always a written form, because you don't always have to have everything in the written form. So I just want to encourage you to think outside the box, that not everything has to be, multiplication tables on paper and things like that. So, oops, there you go. All right. So I think I hit everything that I was going to hit on. And one last thing. I know for me, in case you're somebody also who is pulling your child out, who's already been in public school for a little while, and you're getting some kickback from that, they really want to go in and they want to really be social. I just want you to know you're not alone, because one of my kids is very much like, I want to go to public school and this is how it's going to be, where my other ones are like, cool, let's do homeschool. Let's get started today. So just know that each child's different, and you're not alone. I just want you to know you're not alone. There are going to be some children that are not, on board with us wanting to choose this for our families, if that's what you decide to choose for your family. So just keep in mind you're not alone, and everybody's here to help you out. So that's it for me.
All right, thank you. So I'm looking at time, and everybody has done fabulous. I want to see some head nods. So I promised Q&A, but we are also, at the time, I was hoping we would be totally done, and we're not even there yet. So and everybody's on different time zones, so this is an interesting thing. I want to see some of our speakers nod heads if you're still able and willing to stay for some Q&A, and if you're not, that's okay. If people need to hop off, that is totally appropriate and fine. So I know we've had at least one question in the chat. I had a few that have come up. You guys can unmute. We're going to start with a couple of questions that I know I've heard kind of around lately in general. And so I'll start with some of those. Our speakers have had a few minutes to think about some of those as well. I have to find them, sorry. And we'll start there. So one of the big questions I have is, what are your homeschool must-haves? Like, what are the things that's like, oh, you need that to do homeschool? That, you know, I've thought about like a timer for myself. I don't know. So tell me, if all of you guys can come up with one thing, that's great.
Oh boy. I love my dry erase board. I have to tell you, I have a small dry erase board and a big dry erase board, and I use those a lot in our schooling. It's not the one and only thing, but I love that.
I remember we had a timeline, because no matter what we would do, like with studying, whether it was a biblical story or time in history or literature, we could see that on a continuum and see where it happened. And it was amazing to see who lived at the same time or what author was writing about a certain thing at a certain time. It kind of pulled the curriculum together over the extent of time too.
One thing that especially with older kids and kids that have been in school, that's one thing I was thinking I meant to mention earlier. If you're bringing kids out of public school, they understand the rhythm of a day and, you know, the routines of doing classwork and things like that, which can be a great asset when you're starting off, instead of having to teach them that, like the schools have already taught them that. But for my kids, having their own planners to be able to kind of, I think Tara was showing the poster on your wall with the checklist, but like something for the children to be able to write down what they need as they're older. When they're younger, having something that they can kind of keep track of what they're doing, that has helped our family with juggling the different ages and different workloads and stuff.
I'm going to say book bags. My kids right now are like loving having a book bag, and I like it because my little guy doesn't have one yet. I'm going to get him one because he feels left out. He's 4. He wants one, so I'm going to get him one. But having a book bag, something for them to put their supplies in, you know, their crayons, their markers, all that, because I know my kids like to steal each other's stuff. So I'm like, if it's in your bag, it's in your bag. Nobody's allowed to get in your bag but you, and you got to make sure your stuff gets back in. So a home, whatever, container, book bag, whatever, a home for all their stuff so it's not scattered about, which is hard for me because I'm kind of scattered.
Okay,
I'm gonna piggyback off that, Sarah. I love this. We don't do book bags, but we do this cart. It's just a cheap little cart from Target, and we keep all their little junk on it, like their markers and crayons and pencils, and that's like our must-have because it rolls across the room to whichever student's working. So I like that.
I know we have a couple of other homeschoolers that have not spoken on here, so you guys feel free to answer this too. I can see a couple of you. So I'm going to pull a question I'm going to skip my questions for the moment and pull a question because I've seen this a lot. You know, not all kids are good at math, and so not all parents are good at math, and so that can be interesting. And the school system certainly teaches it very differently than the way that most of us probably learned it. And so what are some of your like favorite math alternatives that are not worksheet book work, like traditional math? Does that make sense?
We use teaching textbooks. Can anyone? I don't know if you guys can hear me. And it is really easy. It is so easy. You can do it where you buy the CD, so you could use it for the next kid. But I'm like, I don't want to deal with that and then lose the thing. So you can do an online version, and it's like a subscription base, and it has their whole profile, has their name and each assignment, and they have to do it in order. It won't work. So that's kind of nice because they can't like screw it up. And it records everything for you. So sorry, my baby's like crawling off the bed. So it records which lessons they did and what they scored, and you can go back and see what they did. And it has a video lesson, and then all the questions are answered on the computer. So my kids would just use like a notebook and a pencil, and he would go through the lesson completely on his own. Even at third grade, he could do it on his own. So that was just one less thing I had to like be hands-on with him. I just kind of checked at the beginning and the end and just asked him how it went, you know? So I really like that, but it only starts in third grade. They don't have it before that. I don't want to turn it off.
Yeah, we did too. Our first couple of years, actually, this is part of our curriculum. It recommended using this. And I think, again, you can order one of these. So we did math 1 and 2. This is workbook. Then we did Singapore math. I really enjoyed Singapore math. When Common Core came out, Singapore math kind of made that make a little bit of sense. It's almost like a good bridge between those. All of my different learners were all able to use that. Teaching textbooks. We just did a year of that as our 7th grade math. And I loved the online. I loved that they did the teaching, and that I could look over the grades and see where we needed to review and make sure that he was doing, understood that concept before he went on. So I did like teaching textbooks, and I just put that in the chat. Another thing we used a lot when, just for tactiles, for visual, is we used money a lot. So pennies, nickels, dimes, dollars, I use that a lot with the early years for teaching with math. And they get excited about it, especially, counting it and getting to keep it and using that. And then Legos. If you have a Lego lover, they're like multiplication on a little unit already. So you can use Legos as part of multiplication and addition. So there's a couple little things.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I like to use like Monopoly or baking or all card games, all those things that just get them using stuff in like using the math concepts. Obviously those are more support things than like a curriculum, but there have been days where the kids are like, can we play Monopoly? Yes. Go for it. Like, take over the world. It's fine. So knowing that they're going to be, learning math stuff and interaction skills, all that kind of stuff. But there's lots of great ways to reinforce math concepts in very non-traditional book kind of ways. So you got lots of options.
Yeah, and I saw Becky wrote in the comments, she wrote about the fractions. I was going to say, with baking, you have all those fractions. I was making a lesson plan up for a course I'm taking, and I was talking about using those fractions. Like, okay, you have a you need a tablespoon of something, but you only have a teaspoon. They only got to figure out how many they have to do, or maybe you only have a half a teaspoon. Now, how many do you have to? So those fractions and just making things work when you don't have what you need. Those are great ways to add those math concepts into like real life, because who's not missing a teaspoon or a tablespoon somewhere? And coins, we love coins. My 6-year-old loves doing coins, and you can count by 5s with the nickels. You can count by singles. You can count by 10s. Money is a great way to get skip counting and things like that in too.
Okay, I'm going to change question. What is the most important thing to consider when choosing curriculum? Because a lot of times people it's a budget and my style, or is it going to match up with the school or whatever? But you guys have done this for a while. What is the most important thing when you pick the curriculum?
Your audience, who your child is, and how they might respond best to what you're teaching. So if they're more hands-on, then they might need a more hands-on curriculum. If they're, reading books a lot, they can pick it up in that way, and different sets of curriculum have have their guides and kind of share with you what that style is more conducive to.
I feel like that worksheet that or that screenshot that you shared at the beginning that Tara shared from Tara, and it had the different styles, that could be really important, like that helpful, I mean, because it really broke down the different styles of learning and teaching, and then gave you actual curriculum to try, so or to look at and to research. So if you guys are able to screenshot that, do you know which one I'm talking about, Mary? The one that had the list. I just feel like that could be really helpful, and at least
I could try to put it back up for a minute. You guys can keep thinking on that question. One of the biggest questions I have, and this is me, but I think probably a lot of parents is, oh, I'm not sure how I can, like, we struggle at home with the concept with the child or with the homework with the child, and I'm thinking how or what are your recommendations, or how do you handle when you've got a child that is unengaged, maybe always, but maybe just for the day, or reluctant for the day, and you're having a rough morning and they are just not doing it, and like you're frustrated, like how do you deal with that?
Then you don't do it. There are days people have, I have to remember, like in school, so my oldest is now in high school, in public high school, and you wouldn't believe how many days they've got assemblies and all sorts of different things going on, fire drills, whatever's going on. There's a lot of days that they're not just sitting there doing school. So give yourself grace and know there's going to be some days where people's brains just aren't turning on, or you all are just really cagey and you need to get outside, and let them go outside, or let them all play games all day. Playing games is a great way of learning too. So just shift what you're doing for that day, and let them have a break. And baking is another thing. So just shift what you're doing. There's still education that can happen, but it might not be recorded on a worksheet that day. So give yourself some grace with that.
I love that she said that, and that's what we do too. Some days when we really need to get stuff done, if it's like reading or something, I'll let her go in the hammock outside if it's decent weather, or on the play set, or just let them have like a long hour break where they can run and play. Or sometimes we just do reading aloud, and that's like our fun thing. They can make forts or whatever, but we just switch it up, and that's why I never do my planner in an ink pen. I'm like so OCD, and I learned that real hard last year. I had all the lessons planned out, and I'm like, well, from January on, I'm going to just pencil put it in. That way I can race and adjust our schedules.
Yeah, we'll do, like Becky said, kind of a lot of times they fight, or she didn't say this, but children will fight against things because there's a lot of energy there. So there's lots of times where, well, when they were younger, I could get them to do a little dance party, like just get silly and take 5 to 10 minutes. And then it's like, okay, now let's do this again, or going for a walk, or like getting outside. And a lot of times that makes a big difference in their ability to come back and refocus. So you may find that you don't even have to write off the whole day. It's just like getting out, giving a break, then come back. Okay, now we can all take a deep breath, start again, So definitely feel like Becky said, the grace to just take it, and that's fine. It's not worth fighting against each other about those things. So, and then there's, if it's a continual thing, then there's an aspect of helping them understand that this is part of how our days look. And then you end up into parenting and teaching about obedience and respecting us in the way that we've structured things, and like all those things. So if it's a continual issue that isn't resolved by a run around the house, then there's an aspect of them having to learn, especially when it's a new thing. It's like, okay, this is important, and helping them grow in those areas, you know.
I read, I don't know where I read it the other day, but the great thing about homeschooling is we have 365 days to homeschool, not 180. So you get to pick which days are the days that your family is going to homeschool.
Yeah, like right now in Tennessee, you know, it's 90 plus degrees every single day, and we don't have access to a pool this summer like we have the last summers when we visited family. So we're not taking, I mean, we've had some time off because we've done a couple of little trips, but like today we pulled out the math books and I said, well, we're not going to start our full year yet, but we're going to start math back because I don't want to go outside anyway. It's too hot. So take a break. My thing we did this year was when the craziness broke out with the quarantine and everybody, you know, all the school moms were saying, you know, it's crazy because they had their kids home. I was like, well, it was crazy for us homeschool moms too, because all of our extracurricular activities got shut down. And I mean, it was weird for us too. So we just took a really long spring break. And I thought, you know what, we're going to do this now because the weather is absolutely gorgeous. And I know it's going to be hot as blazes in July. So we're going to swap this year. We're going to do a little less school right now. We're going to do more starting back when it's so hot in July and August. So
Thanks.
I think too, oh, can I chime in real quick? With the kids, if they're losing focus, I think it's important for us to remember too that we sometimes lose focus as adults. Even we get days where we're just like, I don't know about you, but sometimes I don't sleep well, and like I feel like I'm staring at the wall half the time. Like I don't even know what I'm making for breakfast. Like sometimes our focus is just not there, and giving them grace to have days like that as well. And if you are finding that you're struggling a lot and kind of maybe one of your kids just doesn't is consistently not wanting to do any assignments or you know, study anything, then maybe just digging a little deeper and having a one-on-one with them and finding out like there's something else going on. There could be something else going on. Maybe they're struggling with reading and they don't want anybody to know that they're struggling with reading, and that's why they're not wanting to do things. They could be acting out in different ways to cover up something else. So I just encourage you to build that relationship and work at that. And, you know, the academics come secondary to that. I think for me personally, that's what I believe. You know, do what you can to find out what the issue is. Cause you never know what they might be dealing with. So dig deeper.
All right. If all of our speakers will glance at the chat, there are a few questions in there. And otherwise, anybody who's got a question that you really, really want to ask, by all means, unmute yourself. Hopefully not everybody at once, and ask away.
hey, someone did ask how you keep a younger one occupied while you're trying to teach something to the older. Some things we've done that have worked, and don't get me wrong, it can still be challenging, but as you have older children, they can read to the younger. So I might be working with one of the older children, but then maybe my middle child is reading to the younger. That's been a huge blessing. And then we also have little buckets of math manipulatives, or like a little wooden train set. I'm trying to think of different things. What? Magnets, yeah, magnets. And those things a lot of times we'll only pull out for school. So my toddler, my preschooler, you know, he'll get something that's really cool that he doesn't always get to play with, and that keeps him more occupied during the time when I'm trying to work with an older one. So if that helps.
Hey, I was going to answer there was a social question that was asked about how you socialize your kids. I'm sure everybody does this differently. You heard a lot of people mention co-ops. You can find Facebook groups for your state, I'm sure, for homeschool groups. But so we do that, but my kids have made the closest friends with town sports. So I highly recommend plugging them into a town sport, or, you know, dance, or whatever it is, whatever their interest is. If it's acting, then a town drama production, plugging them into something in the town so they can make friends locally and they have the same interests already. So, because they don't always have the same interests with other homeschool kids. It could be somebody in that area too.
This is a really good question that just got asked, and I don't know the answer to this from our speakers. Are any of you, so I do know that Wendy's husband is not home a lot, so Wendy really does a lot of this by herself. But juggling working from home or even working a full-time, part-time job and trying to homeschool, any of you guys done that? Or have all of you guys kind of been home with the kids?
Yeah, I did. Well, I have a part-time job, so it is from home, but our schoolwork is done by noon. Our schoolwork is done by noon, lunch, and then you guys need to find something to do and not tear the house down while I lock myself in my room and do my work. And seriously, don't knock on the door unless there's bleeding. That's the way it is. And they do find things to do. They find games and they play, and usually it's pretty good. So that's what we do is afternoon. I have a certain set hours that they do not disrupt when I'm working.
Okay, well, it doesn't seem like anybody's unmuting. So I want to thank all of you for jumping on. I did record the call. So let me post you can find me on Facebook if you don't already know me, or I think most everybody was invited by somebody directly, but we may have some that kind of got a hold of the link. I'm going to post my email in here. So that if you want the recording so you can listen back to this, you can email me there and I will try to send it or ask the person who sent it to you. So thank you. Anybody have a final word? If not, I'm gonna hop off. I am gonna not turn this off just yet so that people can look back in the chat at some of those links. So just because we'll say goodbye, but I'm not actually gonna close it for a few minutes. All right. Thank you, thank you. I will add one quick thing, and that is just that most of the people that have spoken tonight, all but one, we all know one another in some capacity, not to all of us super well, but we are all part of just a healthy living group. And so we do things like this. We do things like right now there's a step challenge. We're largely focused on healthier lifestyles and how do we get more plants in our diet and how do I help my picky eater. And we're all part of a big community of folks that are really focused on that. So if that is of interest to you, of like, how did we get together and come up with doing this, reach out to the person who invited you, and I'm sure they will add you to our Facebook group for that as well.
Hey, swapping kids works too with other homeschool moms. If you need an afternoon, you could swap, they watch your kids and they have all the kids one afternoon and then you have the kids another time. So you can work like that and team up with other moms too.
Hey, and just for some encouragement, if you do decide to homeschool and you find you have bad days. No, this is Judah. I've had so many people tell me, oh, you must be so patient. You've got to be the most patient person to be able to homeschool. And I'll just say I'm probably the least patient person on the screen. I really struggle with that. So when you have a bad day, just be honest with your kids, go to them, ask them for forgiveness, tell them, you know what, I screw up just like you guys do. And I mean, we all do. And so just be real and know that it's not because you're horrible at homeschooling. It's just that you're human and you're a person. And so they get to see us living life as opposed to like going to school all day. And so anyway, I have a giggler, so I'll stop now.